The crimson liquid dripped from my chin, soaking into my shirt as the murmurs of onlookers filled the air. A waiter stood frozen nearby, unsure whether to clean the mess or stay out of it. My hand instinctively clenched around the stem of my own untouched glass. But I didn't move. Elena stood over me, breathing heavily, her chest rising and falling as if the act of throwing wine had drained her. The entire restaurant watched, some wide-eyed, others smirking, enjoying the unexpected drama unfolding before them. "Are you going to say something, or are you just going to sit there looking like a fool?" Elena snapped, her voice venomous. I blinked, my mind struggling to make sense of it all. Moments ago, we had been celebrating. Moments ago, I thought I was married to someone who still cared. The burn of humiliation spread through my veins, heating my skin. I inhaled sharply, trying to keep my composure. What the hell was that for? Her lips curled, not in anger, but amusement, that smug, condescending look that made my stomach churn. "You really don't know, do you?" Laughter rippled from her friends. They weren't surprised by her outburst. No, they were enjoying it. Every single one of them had known something I didn't. Miranda, the closest thing Elena had to a confidant, leaned forward, her dark eyes filled with amusement. "Oh, honey, this is priceless." She turned to Elena. "Are you finally going to tell him, or should we?" Elena smirked, tilting her head. "I think he's too stupid to understand even if I did." My pulse pounded against my skull. I had spent years giving her everything: love, security, a future. And now she was standing there, mocking me, humiliating me in front of everyone. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping against the floor. "Tell me what?" She folded her arms, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her elbow. "You sit at home thinking you're this wonderful husband, this devoted, hard-working man. But the truth—" She leaned in slightly, voice dripping with cruelty. "I outgrew you a long time ago." Silence. The words hit like a freight train. The restaurant's chatter dulled to white noise as my world tilted. "Excuse me." My voice was low, even, but inside something cracked. Elena sighed, rolling her eyes. "Oh, don't act so shocked. I've been bored for years, and frankly, I'm done pretending." She turned to her friends, grinning. "Did you really think I was going to spend my best years tied to a man like you?" Laughter. My heart pounded as a sharp bitterness settled in my mouth. "If that's how you feel, why are we even celebrating this anniversary?" She scoffed, reaching for her glass, then realizing it was empty. "Because I wanted a free dinner." Miranda snorted. Another friend, Cassidy, covered her smirk with her hand. A fire ignited inside me. "How long?" Elena met my gaze, unaffected by the hurt in my voice. "How long what?" "How long have you been cheating on me?" Another ripple of gasps spread through the restaurant. This wasn't a lover's quarrel anymore. This was a full-blown scandal, and everyone was glued to it. For the first time, Elena hesitated. It was brief, a flicker of something. Hesitation? Guilt? Number amusement. She stepped closer, just enough for only me to hear. "Wouldn't you like to know?" Rage surged through me. My fingers twitched, itching to throw something, to shout, to demand the truth. But then she laughed, a quiet, mocking sound that sliced through me like a blade. She was enjoying this. I clenched my jaw. "You're disgusting," she smirked. "And yet, you still love me." A lie. She didn't believe that. She just wanted to twist the knife deeper. A waiter cautiously approached, dabbing at my soaked shirt with a napkin. "Sir, would you like me to—" I waved him off, my eyes never leaving Elena's. I think we're done here." I grabbed my jacket, ignoring the burning stares around me, and turned for the exit. Elena called after me, her voice dripping with mockery. "Oh, come on, don't leave. You haven't even paid the bill yet." More laughter. I stopped, just for a second. Then I walked out, leaving her and her little clique of hyenas to feast on the ruin of whatever was left of our marriage. The cool night air hit me as I stepped outside. I took a breath, my hands shaking. Humiliated, betrayed, but something else burned beneath it all. Revenge. And Elena had no idea what was coming. The cold night air did little to calm the fire raging inside me. My car sat under the dim glow of a street lamp, but I wasn't ready to drive. My shirt clung to my skin, still damp with the wine Elena had thrown. My hands gripped the roof of the car as I closed my eyes, forcing my breathing to slow. Elena had humiliated me in front of her friends, mocking my ignorance. She had cheated. She had lied. But the worst part, she didn't even have the decency to deny it. I had spent a decade loving a woman who had never truly loved me back. The weight of realization crushed my chest, but I wasn't going to let it break me. I needed the truth, the full truth. I wasn't going to be her fool anymore. The first clue. When I finally climbed into the car, I didn't go home. Instead, I drove around, replaying every moment, every suspicious behavior I had ignored over the years. The way she always kept her phone face down, the sudden girls' trips, the late-night showers when she came home later than usual. I gritted my teeth. How long had I been nothing more than a placeholder? I needed proof. Elena was too confident, too smug. She had grown comfortable in her betrayal. And if she thought I was going to sit back and accept it, she had made a mistake. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through our shared location history. Elena wasn't tech-savvy, so she had never thought to disable it. A list of her most visited locations appeared. Some were familiar: her office, our home, the gym. But one stood out: Hotel Royale, 5 visits in the last 2 months. My stomach clenched. A hotel. Not a bar, not a restaurant. A hotel. I gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Confrontation delayed. I drove home in silence. The house was dark when I arrived, except for the dim glow coming from our bedroom window. Elena was awake. I stepped inside, shutting the door behind me. I half expected her to be waiting, maybe with another cruel remark. Instead, the house was eerily quiet. My footsteps echoed as I climbed the stairs. I pushed open the bedroom door and found her sitting at the vanity, brushing her hair like nothing had happened. She met my gaze in the mirror, raising an eyebrow. "Oh, you finally decided to come home." I said nothing. She smirked, setting the brush down. "Let me guess. You spent the last few hours sulking, maybe even crying." Her voice was casual, almost bored. I stepped closer. "Who is he?" She turned, feigning innocence. "Who?" "Don't play dumb, Elena." My voice was low, controlled. "I know about the hotel." For the first time, she faltered. It was subtle, a flicker of hesitation in her eyes, but I saw it. I took another step. "Do you even feel guilty?" Elena sighed, stretching her arms like this conversation was exhausting her. "Guilt is for people who regret their actions. And, to be honest," she leaned forward, her lips curling into a cruel smile, "I don't regret a damn thing." My fists clenched. "You really have no shame, do you?" She laughed, standing up and walking toward me. Her perfume, the one I had bought her for our anniversary last year, filled the space between us. "Oh, grow up. People cheat all the time." I stared at her, searching for any sign of the woman I had once loved. But she was gone. Or maybe she had never been there at all. "You disgust me," I muttered, turning for the door. But before I could leave, her voice stopped me cold. "If you walk away now, you'll never know the full story." I froze. She was toying with me. She wanted me to beg, to demand answers, to lose my temper. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. Without another word, I walked out, slamming the door behind me. The private investigator, I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her laughing at me, taunting me. By morning, I had made up my mind. If Elena wanted to play games, I would play too. I contacted a private investigator, Nathan Carter, a former detective who now specialized in exposing cheaters. He was sharp, ruthless, and exactly the kind of person I needed. We met at a small cafe downtown. Carter was a man of few words, but his reputation spoke for itself. He slid a notebook across the table. "Tell me everything you know," he said. I took a deep breath. "My wife is cheating on me. I need proof." He nodded, jotting something down. "Any suspects?" I hesitated. "Not yet, but I know she's been using Hotel Royale." Carter's eyes flickered with interest. "That's a good start." He closed the notebook and leaned back. "Give me a week. If she's up to something, I'll find out." I shook his hand. "I want everything. Photos, messages, names. I don't just want to catch her. I want to destroy her." Carter smirked. "Then you came to the right guy." The first blow. 2 days later, Carter sent me the first batch of evidence. Surveillance photos, videos, time-stamped receipts, and the name of the man Elena had been meeting. My blood ran cold. Jonathan Cole. My boss. A man I had admired, trusted, respected. He had been sleeping with my wife behind my back, parading her around in hotels while I worked overtime at the company he owned. I gripped the edge of my desk, breathing heavily. This wasn't just betrayal. This was war, and I was going to make them both pay. Rage coiled inside me like a serpent, tightening with every breath. Jonathan Cole, the man who shook my hand after every project completion, who toasted with me at company events, who looked me in the eye and called me a valued employee. And all the while, he was screwing my wife. I clenched my fists, staring at the damning evidence sprawled across my desk. Photos of Elena draped over him, her fingers teasing his tie. Videos of them entering and exiting Hotel Royale, timestamps exposing just how often they indulged in their betrayal. This wasn't just cheating. This was mockery. They thought they could get away with it. They were wrong. A plan takes shape. I wasn't about to confront them like a heartbroken fool. I wanted to ruin them, to make sure neither of them ever forgot what they had done to me. I needed to be smart, calculating. I called Nathan Carter, my investigator. "I need more than proof," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "I need leverage." Carter chuckled. "I figured you'd say that." He sent another file, one that made my stomach turn. Fraud. Jonathan had been embezzling company funds for years, moving money through shell accounts, covering his tracks just enough to avoid suspicion. And Elena? She wasn't just his mistress. She was helping him. Her signature was on certain documents, transactions traced back to her bank account. She wasn't just cheating on me, she was breaking the law. I exhaled, the fury in my chest hardening into something sharper. I had everything I needed. The perfect setup. For the next week, I played my role perfectly. I came home like nothing was wrong, ate dinner with Elena, let her believe I was still the pathetic husband she could walk all over. Meanwhile, I prepared. Step 1. Secure evidence. I made copies of all the documents, stored them in multiple locations, sent them to trusted contacts, ensuring even if something happened to me, the truth would come out. Step 2. Set the stage. Jonathan had no idea I knew. He still greeted me at work like usual, still expected my loyalty. So I arranged a company event, an exclusive dinner, supposedly in celebration of a major client deal. Elena, of course, was invited. They had no clue I was the one pulling the strings. The night of the event, I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie. My reflection didn't show a broken man. It showed someone ready to burn everything down. The night of reckoning. The restaurant was high-end, the kind of place where people whisper deals worth millions over wine and steak. Jonathan arrived first, dressed in his usual expensive suit, shaking hands, charming clients. Elena showed up shortly after, wearing a sleek black dress, acting like the devoted wife in public. I watched them from across the room, my expression unreadable. I approached Jonathan first, extending my hand. He grinned, clasping it like we were old friends. "Glad you could make it," he said, completely unaware of what was coming. Elena slipped beside him, smiling as if she hadn't thrown wine in my face just days ago. "Darling," she cooed, looping her arm around mine, playing the perfect wife for the audience. I almost laughed. The trap was set. At the height of the evening, when the wine was flowing and conversation buzzed, I took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice carrying through the room, "I want to take a moment to acknowledge someone truly exceptional tonight." All eyes turned to me. I smiled at Jonathan. "A man I've admired for years, a man who taught me everything I know about this company." Jonathan lifted his glass, grinning. "You're too kind." I tilted my head. "And of course, I can't forget my wonderful wife, Elena, the woman who stood by my side through everything." Elena beamed, thinking I was giving her praise. I glanced at Carter, sitting inconspicuously in the back. He nodded, signaling that everything was in place. I reached into my pocket, pulling out a USB drive. A waitress walked over, taking it from me and plugging it into the restaurant's massive screen. "What is this?" Jonathan chuckled, shifting in his seat. I met his gaze. "The truth." The screen flickered to life. First, images of Jonathan and Elena together. Their hotel meetings, the intimate touches, the stolen kisses. Gasps echoed through the room. Some people laughed in disbelief. Others whispered, stunned. Elena's face paled. Jonathan shot up from his seat. "Turn that off." But the slideshow wasn't over. Next, bank statements, transaction records, email correspondence, proof of fraud, all tied directly to Jonathan and Elena. Murmurs turned into shouts. Executives exchanged knowing glances. Investors' faces twisted in horror. Jonathan collapsed back into his seat, sweat beading on his forehead. Elena? She just stared, frozen, lips parted, realization crashing over her. I turned to them, my voice calm, even. "You thought you could betray me and walk away unscathed." I leaned forward, lowering my voice just enough that only they could hear. "You thought wrong." Security entered the room. Two men in suits approached Jonathan. One flashed a badge. "Mr. Cole, you're under arrest for corporate fraud." Elena's head snapped toward me. "You set us up." I smiled. "No, sweetheart. You set yourself up. I just made sure everyone saw it." The officers pulled Jonathan to his feet, slapping cuffs around his wrists. He barely had time to curse before they dragged him toward the exit. Elena reached for me, panic creeping into her eyes. "You can't do this. You still love me." I stepped back, shaking my head. "No, Elena. I loved the woman I thought you were, but that person doesn't exist." Her face twisted, desperate. "Please." I held up my hand. "We're done." Then I turned and walked away, leaving her to drown in the wreckage she had created. The night air was crisp as I stepped out of the restaurant, leaving behind the chaos I had unleashed. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting louder as police cars pulled up to the entrance. I didn't stop to watch Jonathan being hauled off like the criminal he was. And Elena, she was still inside, humiliated, broken, and completely alone. The woman who had once thrown wine in my face, mocking me in front of her friends, was now the subject of every whisper, every judgmental glance. She had destroyed our marriage with her betrayal. I had simply returned the favor. I exhaled, a strange lightness settling in my chest. For the first time in years, I felt free. The aftermath. The next morning, Elena called me. I let it go to voicemail. Then she called again and again. By noon, she had left over a dozen messages, her voice shifting from anger to desperation. "Damn it, pick up. You ruined me, you bastard. I lost everything. Do you even care? We can fix this. We can talk. Just call me back." I listened to every message with the same cold detachment. I didn't respond. Instead, I sent her a single text. "File for divorce." "It's over," she responded instantly. "You don't mean that." I blocked her number. Her world crumbles. News of Jonathan's arrest spread fast. His empire collapsed overnight. Stocks plummeted. Investors pulled out. And Elena? She lost everything. She had been dependent on Jonathan's wealth, riding on his influence. Now, with him facing serious prison time, she was left with nothing. No money, no status, no future. A week later, I received an email from a lawyer. Elena was fighting for alimony. I smirked. She really thought she still had power over me. I forwarded the email to my attorney with a simple message. She gets nothing. And thanks to the ironclad prenuptial agreement she had once laughed at, she really did get nothing. Closure months passed. My divorce was finalized. I moved to a new home, started fresh. One evening, I was at a bar enjoying my drink when I noticed a familiar figure sitting alone in the corner. Elena. Her once glamorous aura was gone. She looked exhausted, her clothes far less extravagant than before. She wasn't surrounded by friends, no admirers, no expensive jewelry, just a woman who had lost everything. She saw me, her eyes widening. For a moment, I thought she might approach me. But then she hesitated. She knew. She knew that there was nothing left to say. I gave her one last look, a look of indifference. Then I turned my back on her for good. As I stepped out into the night, I smiled. I had won. And Elena, she would spend the rest of her life knowing she had destroyed herself. The end.